Guys, welcome back. I've got Coach Whitney Reese on today, and we're talking about recovery, more specifically, recovery during competition. And for context, we're kind of going into the CrossFit Open right now. So I'll probably ask Whitney to stay a little bit more on the 5 weeks of competition setting, but I would love for her to contrast some of those things. But first and foremost, Whitney, you told me a minute ago that you are struggling to recover from a few days. Can you dig into that for a moment?
Sure. So yeah, that's partially some stupid human things that I did with myself, which is having gone on a 12-day vacation of absolutely no interaction with technology, and really great sleep and no cellular magnetic things at all around me. From that, immediately into flying to Philadelphia, spending 3 days teaching, which meant the majority of that was in a fasted state and very mentally demanding, because it's trying to teach 35 other people how to think and then how to perform manipulative techniques for physical therapy. And then flying back to Texas at 3 a.m. and then going straight into a clinic to teach again. So I would say that that is epically not a way to recover, is to change your environment, change your food, change your activity, and change your sleep drastically in a 3-day time span.
Perfect. And if people dig right into that, you'll probably know exactly what rabbit holes we're going down on the rest of this conversation. So let me open
Yeah.
up with this question, particularly as it relates to the CrossFit Open. What are some things that you notice that people do or don't do that hurts them over the course of 5 weeks?
Yeah. So most consistently, what I see can be harmful throughout the process of the open, which is 5 weeks, is not acknowledging the reality of your own schedule. So, as adults that are working, if we are working while doing the CrossFit Open, then we have to acknowledge that what probably is not successful is to go do an entire work day and then go do a CrossFit Open workout at the end of the workday without allowing some type of nutrition to plan how to perform, and without having a plan for getting the body out of that work environment.
Mm.
To try to do the open in a fatigued state at the end of the day for adults that are working probably isn't going to result in the ability to do that every single week.
So you kind of just beat your body up compoundingly each week, where by week 5 you're just on fumes essentially. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
it could be done the first week, maybe the second, but by the end of the fifth week, you're basically just surviving is what's going on.
Slight aside, what do you think about people who do an open workout, say before work at 5 a.m. or 5:30? What would you say on that, or is that more rhythmic based?
For That's a bit more based on the individual. Um, for younger individuals, and by younger, I mean less than 35. So if you're younger, to attempt to express range of motion and power early in the morning is a bit more realistic. For adults that have some wear and tear on their body, range of motion is actually worst first thing in the morning. The structures between joints that hold fluid are bigger, so there's more hydration. So range of motion actually takes a little bit of time to clean up first thing in the morning.
Mm.
So depends on their age, depends on the nature of the workout as well. If it was a open workout that could be performed in a fat adapted state first thing in the morning, for some people that are fat adapted, would be okay.
And when you
If
when you say fat adapted, what do you mean?
so, that would mean the ability to utilize fat as an energy source. Some people genetically can do that better than others. There are ways to train the body to do it more efficiently. It does mean the intensity is lower, which is not usually an open workout. Um, so open workouts, because the time domain and the relative intensity rarely are fat adapted as far as the type of energy utilization.
And
Typically, it's going to require sugars.
yeah, and just for people to keep thinking through, why would the CrossFit Open generally more demand sugar as compared to fat?
So for me to use fat as an energy source, I'm doing something longer in duration and low in intensity. From the most simplistic definition. So for me to be using fat as an energy source, I could be doing something like working at my computer or reading or playing a game of cards. One example in nutrition is playing chess. You're not really tapping into the expression of energy and intensity that it usually occurs with carbohydrate-based metabolism. Um, for really effectively using fat, genetics influences the other side of that.
Mm.
Um, you can switch that engine into using fats, but it does take, for some people, 2 to 3 weeks of the feeling really, really bad phase, which is sometimes nicknamed the keto hangover, because you're switching how your body uses substrates. The reason why it may be important is if we look at the chemical reactions that occur for energy in the body. That's defined by how much ATP is produced. That is the chemical energy source for all cells is ATP. If I'm using fat as an energy source, and I can do this genetically, I net, I believe the number is 319 molecules of ATP if I'm using fat. If I'm using creatine, I'm going to burn through that in about 6 to 10 seconds. If I am, depending on my genetics, going through something like the Krebs cycle and I'm using pyruvate, I'm going to get 2 ATP. So I burn through things really, really fast on a really high engine. I'm only going to net 2 of those ATP molecules. If I'm just going real slow and I can take fat from my cells, send it to my liver, package it in a way that then goes back into my mitochondria and my cells, and go through metabolizing that fat, I can get 319 points for energy.
So a lot higher.
Way higher. But it takes so long to do that it isn't how the human body prefers to attempt to burn energy when it comes to needing to tap into that quickly.
So the shorter the workout, the higher the intensity, the more likelihood to go to sugars, and the less likelihood to be able to utilize fat as the source.
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct.
Okay. So if those are some of the basic concepts, which are, at least thus far, you have to understand what your schedule looks like. You have to understand what the open workouts are generally going to require of you. What can you do? And let's just put the timeline of during the 5 weeks of the open to better recover from each of those workouts. And I'll try to caveat by saying maybe the first example would be if they do the workout once a week. And then maybe the second example would be if they have to repeat the workout multiple times in either certain or all weeks.
Yeah, so to best recover, aside from knowing your schedule, one is, at this point, hopefully you would have an idea for how long it takes you to recover from intensity.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is, if you're working within a plan, knowing you're going to give the open a go, and your intent behind the open is to qualify for a next phase. For some people, that could be improving how they score rank wise compared to last year. But that means I'm competing in the open. So if my intent is I'm competing, hopefully I know at this point in the year, if I do a workout that requires me to do movements and intensity that typically would be in the open, how long does it take me to be able to do something similar to that again? So if I already know that at this point in time, I already know if I'm doing it once or twice a week. If I'm older, unfortunately, it's going to take me longer to recover. So that is one caveat, is my nervous system is what's going to drive my ability the most. I can survive if I'm not tapping into energy in the best manner. Like you can survive through that. But at a certain point, if your nervous system doesn't recover, you can't express speed, you can't express power, and the ability to perform a coordinated movement goes out the window. So in both scenarios, the entire week is based upon preserving the nervous system.
How would you know how long that takes? Is that a feel type of a thing for most athletes? Is that when you feel good again? How would you tell somebody to say you're recovered or not? Or is that through so much training that they know what good, let's just call it additional training, looks like when they're recovered versus not?
Yeah, hopefully it's been built into training. So there's some ways externally to really see, has someone been able to clear the byproducts of intensity. That does go down the rabbit hole a bit of pH testing. We'll just say that if you're doing those things, that means you're competing and that you're probably thinking you're doing this twice a week. And that means that at this point in the year, you've already worked with whoever it is that's coaching you to guide you through what should my urine pH be. If I'm testing pH in my mouth, that probably means I've been doing something with how I use fat. But if I'm doing pH testing, I've already practiced what pH number I'm looking at and how I can bring that toward a more ideal number. So that might be something we go on
Oh
more
man,
of a discussion on in the future,
yeah,
maybe
I think
not
that'd be
today.
cool. It'd be cool to hit that in the future just to understand why that would even be the case. But let's try to move on for right now. So within the continual context, let's assume that somebody um, can express twice a week. What would you say they should be doing to best recover in between those efforts?
So twice a week this point in the year means probably doing one attempt the day the open is announced or immediately that next day. So that would be a Thursday or Friday. And then if doing it again, that probably means another attempt on Monday. So to have the best opportunity to do that consistently, that does mean consuming food you can absorb effectively with minimal stress on the gut.
And
So
is that through the whole weekend, or is
that's
that
through the
okay?
weekend. That's through the weekend. Because I need my body focused on recovery. So if I eat something, for example, really high in fat, so to make this a drastic scenario, let's say I eat a rib eye and macadamia nuts. That's like a strange mix, but nuts are very hard to break down. It requires water, more water proportionally to break down nuts. And so my gut has to put more blood into my intestinal tract to start breaking down those macadamia nuts. The red meat, because of the fat in it, I need more blood in my gut to help digest and absorb that food, which means none of that blood is in my muscles and it's not circulating around my body as well. It's focused on digestion. So if I need my blood to circle around my body to get stuff out of my muscles, so my muscles now can put glycogen back in them so I can express speed and power again, I need that blood not in my intestinal tract. I need it circulating around in my muscles and I need it in my circulatory system.
So broadly speaking, how long would you expect, let's just say, getting the blood back out of the intestine would take for a ribeye as compared to something much less challenging to digest?
Yeah, so different types of foods are digested at different rates and in different areas in the digestive tract. So fats are going to typically take somewhere between 4 to 8 hours. And then there's also a 3-day investment in nutrition. So the thing that I ate 3 days ago, between when I put it in my mouth, when it makes it to my stomach, where simple sugars are broken up first, and then the acid in my stomach starts the process of breaking down proteins. And then as it gets into my intestines, that's where fat starts to get metabolized and amino acids are pulled out of those proteins. So the more complex the protein, the longer it takes to digest as well. When it's partnered with fat, it takes a little bit longer. So that's why during competition phases, nutrition looks a little bit different. It's more like lean protein, like chicken and turkey, as an example, in a format that's really easy to absorb. So think of crock pot pulled chicken. I don't have to chew it as much. It's already kind of mushed up. It's a little easier to swallow. Now, hopefully I have good habits and I'm really chewing it, because the more I chew it, the faster it is for my body to break it down and absorb it. So if I have more space between the particles of food, it's easier for the acids in the stomach to digest it and absorb it.
Mm.
And that does mean doing carbohydrates that are typically kind of mushy, because they're easier to digest, which means there's less stress on my body for digestion. So I can, in theory, put that energy into expressing movement.
Gotcha. Okay, so more easily digestible food throughout the course of, let's just call it the whole weekend, and really kind of over the course of 5 weeks almost. What about on the, let's call it the preparation slash recovery of the body? And I know certainly, the food is extremely important, but what do you have people do, let's just call it after each of their open workouts or after their training workouts leading into these?
Some of that depends on the nature of the athlete. So we've probably all met or seen in the media athletes that are known for being more in their head. So if that individual athlete has more noise in their head than anywhere else, then after completing a workout, a component of starting the recovery process is to actually get them out of their head and to stop repetitively analyzing their performance.
Hmm.
So that might be, okay, you finished. Once you've finished your open workout, what I want you to do is I'm going to have you go into a quiet room, set a timer for 15 minutes. We're going to go into a position where you can effectively do diaphragmatic breathing. That's going to move a whole lot more oxygen around, which is going to help kind of the recovery process. It also is a way to actually decrease muscular tone, is to use the diaphragm and diaphragmatic breathing to calm the nervous system. And while you're doing that, I want you to reflect upon your performance, things you did well and things you feel you could improve upon. Write them down. Once you have written them down, fold them into a piece of paper, and please don't look at them until tomorrow morning. So by not writing those things down, in the person that their noise is in their head, their brain keeps circulating over and over and over again on things that they could have, should have, or wanted to do differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that constant mental energy keeps priming the nervous system back up. So each time they think about, for example, I didn't link my toe bars as well as I should have, the second their brain says competition toe bar, the hormonal response and the nervous system response is to start recreating the patterns that their brain was performing during the competition. So it starts bringing the nervous system back into the state of competing. So to get out of that, you have to bring the nervous system back out, which means think about it, write it down, be done with it. So in those athletes, typically a component of a program leading into competing is finding the strategy for them that helps them get out of their head.
Interesting.
The people that are like, I can do it, cut it out, I did it, I'm done, I'm good. They probably don't need that process.
Interesting. What's after that?
So after that is sleep. A sign that you're surviving and not performing is starting to see a disruption in sleep. So that doesn't mean sleeping more, sleeping less. That can be a sign. But that actually means that the quality of their sleep is changing. So the amount of time in deep sleep and in REM starts to shift. That means they're no longer recovering when they're sleeping. It may be that they're waking up in the middle of the night. I woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I needed to go pee. Well, if that's not normally happening throughout the year and it's starting to happen during the Open, that's another sign that the body is shifting into that I'm just surviving phase, which means it can't recover from the thing that you did before. And so going into the next competition while that's going on, can it be done? Yes, it just means you're surviving now.
How about, man, this is interesting. How about things that you often see marketed, right? Like all the foam rolling and all that stuff in between. What are your thoughts on that stuff?
Oh gosh, that's a can of worms.
And we don't have a lot of time.
No, we don't. So in honesty, for foam rolling, probably 95% of the people that are rolling on foam rollers don't need to do it. It's marketing. It is marketing. The profession of physical therapy relative to rehab has been around since the 1940s. And it's fair to say that foam rollers were not used in rehab until they became commercially available, because they weren't needed.
Gotcha.
So can they do a few things? Yes. You can put some friction through superficial muscles, which can help with moving blood superficially.
Can you explain what that means, or like an example of?
Yeah. So think of a knot in cookie dough. If I need to roll a knot out of cookie dough, I can do that with a foam roller. If I have taffy, rolling taffy with a roller is not going to make it longer. I have to pull taffy. So if I have a short tissue, rolling the short tissue isn't going to make it longer. It's going to make it pliable. So if I have a pliability issue, a foam roller is probably going to help me. But I have to ask myself, does that make sense for what I did? So if I did an open workout with thrusters and my quads are really sore and I have limited range of motion and I have a big knot in it, a foam roller might help me move my leg better, but it's not going to change why I can't move my leg better. The reason I can't move my leg better is I didn't have the muscle endurance in my quads to express the number of contractions I needed to do.
Yep.
So a foam roller is just going to band-aid it. So far in research, foam rollers have mostly been compared to the type of hands-on soft tissue techniques that rehab professionals do for only a knot in a muscle, or for in someone that has trouble moving fluid through their most superficial tissues.
Gotcha.
That's really the only thing that it's been shown to do so far. Caveat, it also hasn't been shown to harm anything.
Yeah. Last question for you then, and similar style as the foam rolling. What are your thoughts on post-workout cool down? That could look like bike, that could look like row, that could look like walk. What do you like to have your athletes do kind of immediately after? And certainly we got to remember the relaxing of the brain has to be a part of that. But what about physically?
Um, as long as the open workout didn't involve an assault bike. I do personally like to have athletes get on a bike. My preference is a stationary bike rather than an assault bike, because assault bikes have a concentric contraction. There's still some resistance. So for cool down, that just means moving blood. I want them doing something in a low nervous system demanding state that lets them systemically move a lot of blood through their body. So that's part one. Part two is as the temperature of the body starts to come down and as blood flow is moving, having them doing some diaphragmatic breathing. The two of those together taking about half an hour, as long as they have time, before going to consume any type of protein. Because I also want to give the body the opportunity to move blood back into a state where you can digest your food. So if I have them go from an open workout, no cool down, no diaphragmatic breathing, they don't have enough blood available around the intestinal tract and around the gut to be able to break down their food either. So I need an actual window of time to put the body now in a state where it's not in a I'm competing state, so I need it to be relaxed to then get the benefit of food. Because
Gosh.
otherwise it's just going to sit in my stomach because I don't have the blood available to start digesting it.
As always, Whitney, this has been fantastic. And I can just think of so many different examples of what you're saying that you can see the result of, somebody who can't sleep during the open, or somebody who, has terrible stomach problems throughout a competition or something. And could be any one of those different reasons, but these have been great suggestions. So I really appreciate you coming on, and we will see everybody next time. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
Oof.